Oh, it's recording. Hello, everyone. The best plans. What I intended to do today, and it's Thursday, week 2, just double checking, was wander around to each studio and just have a little bit of a chat about the technology that you might choose to use when you're building your application. We normally do it in week 2 because that's the time students are starting to stress about it a bit. However, a couple of things happened. When I started to do it this morning, it took longer than I thought, so there was no way I could get around to all the studios. And two, just being involved in discussions with the students, and this is a really positive one, not many groups of students were all that worried about technology. They were rightfully focused on what their problem was, what their audience was, what data they were going to use, what functions they might provide, and just had a vague idea that they might do it with a website, or they might do it with, I'm not sure what happened to my computer just then, they might do it with a website or an app or a tablet, and that's actually spot on. That's exactly appropriate. However, that'll change really fast. You're working on your project proposals, and sometimes the only real way to nut out the problem that you're working on is actually to start to build it. And that's the whole essence of agile development. And very quickly, you will be building some sort of a system. And you will need some hardware and software and technology resources to do it. So just a little bit of a tour of the kinds of things that have worked in the past and the kinds of recommendations I'm going to make to you. Some groups have a lot of confidence, a lot of skill with technologies, other groups don't. And we want you to make good decisions about the architecture of your system that matches not only the needs of the system and the audience, but also the skills in your team. So, just a bit of a tour. Just got my computer here, and we're probably, even if you're building an app for a phone, you're probably going to need some sort of database at the back end. And certainly if you're building a website, you will need a web server. So you'll need some sort of server out there in the cloud. And the main server providers in the cloud are Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. And you can see they all have a big call to action. I'm logged in as Google, but normally you go to Google and it says free. Amazon says free, and Microsoft says free. Now, I'm going to recommend you use Google. Microsoft's free account gives you a couple of $100, but it normally only lasts for about 30 days. Amazon has a whole bunch of stuff that's for free. And you create an account, you have to give them your credit card details to do that, but they don't charge you if you stick to the free tier, and you do get some free credit. But Google's is pretty good. Google's free account lasts for a year, and you get $300 credit, and you get plenty of stuff. So I've been running this account that we're about to look at for about 8 months, and I've got a couple of things I'm not doing much with, but I've got a couple of things that are just buzzing away. There you go, I've got 2 cloud storage instances, 1 cloud SQL instance and 1 virtual machine, and I've still got like $50 left, and I'm just wastefully using that account. So it'll last plenty of time. It'll certainly last for the unit, and you can create quite a few virtual machines and databases and websites if you want. And Google's web access functionality, the firewalls they create and the private networks they create are pretty good. But you might also have a look at Amazon and Microsoft. So sniff around them all, create free accounts with all of them. But Google's the one I'm recommending, and student groups have used Google pretty much in the past. Now, if you're building a website, you probably want you'll want a web server. You may just need like an application stack that has, say, PHP pre-installed in it. That's perfectly reasonable. One of the places you might go to is a resource called Bitnami, which is a website that has a whole bunch of pre-created virtual machines for all sorts of software packages, and it works with Oracle, with Microsoft. I'm pretty sure it works with Google as well. And you just basically pick the application you want, you hit build, and there's WordPress, Joomla. Look, it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. There's no shortage of, and a whole bunch coming, no shortage of applications and application engines and development environments that are pre-configured. You click on one and you say you want to launch it in the cloud, and you pick your provider, and there you go. It goes Google, goes Amazon, goes Microsoft, goes Oracle, and I have no idea what CenturyLink 1 and Open Telecom are, but I'm going to go and have a look. It used to just have the big four. So that's a bit about some of the infrastructure. And database-wise, you might use Hadoop or Mongo or some of those new fancier NoSQL environments, but you're probably going to use MySQL or SQL Server, something like that. And again, they can be set up in the cloud either as pre-configured stacks, or you create a virtual machine and create it yourself. Just on, I mentioned SQL Server, you can get all the Microsoft stuff. They've got a website. If you type in Dream Spark, which is how I got to this page, just search for that, and there you go, takes you to this particular place, and you sign in with your Monash an account, and you can download all sorts of stuff. And again, you can see they're making an offering for Azure, but you can get Visual Studio, SQL Server versions of the server versions of Windows, all sorts of stuff there, and I recommend you kick around that. Come back to Microsoft in a moment to look at Xamarin. Now, just in terms of coding, so a lot of groups won't be particularly confident with... Where was I? Oh, that's right. So if you're building a website, having just looked at cloud resources you can use to serve it, but you actually need a website. Good websites don't necessarily have to be coded. You can use an environment like PHP or .NET, and you can create a custom-built solution. But another alternative to that, if your team doesn't have many programmers in it, or any programmers, you can use WordPress. WordPress is absolutely fabulous. You can build really good looking websites, and they can have, I'm just scrolling through the wordpress.org website, they can have really quite complex functionality, and of course you can customize the functionality. So if you've got a team with one programmer, maybe get the programmer to work on the customization, and everybody else worries about the look and feel and the functionality that WordPress offers. Now, a whole bunch of WordPress stuff is done through plugins, and I'll just look at the plugin directory, and let's just search for something that does maps. A lot of applications often use maps and combine maps with data, and you can see there's 145 pages of applications that do maps. So, no shortage of functionality, and WordPress is pretty cool. And of course, WordPress is not the only really big, major, well-used CMS. Joomla, Drupal, .NET Nuke, there's quite a few that are free and have extensive plugin libraries. Another thing to think about it, this one is an example called Grav, another CMS. There's a lot of CMSs that are now built that typical. WordPress is fairly typical of Drupal, Joomla. They're written in, say, PHP, and they talk to a MySQL database. There's another bunch of websites that are now flat file based. They just write XML. Those ones tend to use scripting. Grab is an example of a scripting one. So there's, if you just go markup CMS in Google, you'll come across Grav, and you'll come across a whole heap of other CMSs, and you can see it looks pretty cool. And again, there's a community, and there's plugins, and lots of templates and skeletons and basic things. I actually really like Grav. There's many of them. Grav's pretty cool because you can just use WYSIWYG editors to create your pages, but you can also just write code as well in this markup. So it's pretty cool. So that's CMSs, but of course you can just build stuff. And one of the keys to building, say, a website, encoding it, is what the front end looks like. A lot of people use, oh, I'm doing something wrong with Git in the background. A lot of people use Bootstrap, and I'm just exploring the Bootstrap website to just show you how it works. And notice there's a little hamburger menu, but as the screen size gets bigger, I get a full menu. So, and that's what we call a responsive website, where it's a combination of HTML tags, CSS responses to those tags and a little bit of JavaScript, and you just sort of add some code. Add some code to the way you use your HTML. There's plenty of tutorials around the web, and it just works. And Bootstrap's not the only one. So here's another one. This one's called Materialize, and it does the same thing. And you can see that menu disappearing and becoming a hamburger menu when there's no screen real estate. So I strongly recommend you do that. Sorry, I just keep getting interrupted at exactly the wrong time. Right, so that's web stuff. You can code it, use a language like PHP, connect to an underlying database, host it in the cloud, recommending Google, and use some sort of JavaScript CSS framework to make the front end look good. And that's pretty standard. Or you can use a CMS, and the CMSs will have that kind of, and we looked at WordPress and Grav, and they'll have that kind of responsiveness built into them. Now, you might build an iPhone app, and the standard way of building an iPhone app is Apple's Xcode, or you might build an Android app, and the standard way of building an Android app is Android Studio. So if you think your target is a phone or a tablet, these are the development environments you'll probably look at first. Now, they're pretty programming heavy, so only do that if you've got lots of programmers in your groups. Just one thing about Apple: to deploy it onto an iOS device, you need a series of certificates. Apple charge you for them, but we've got a university license. Doesn't let us load stuff in the App Store, but does allow you to plug a phone in and put stuff on it, so that's worth doing. Let me know and I'll add you to the account. And Android Studio is free. It's based on Eclipse. You code in Java, and you just pump it onto the Android device as you need to. But if you're writing for mobiles and tablets, you don't have to write the code. Some stuff for you to think about, so I just shut down some windows. Well, there's my Facebook. Some stuff for you to think about. A lot of apps for mobile devices are actually written using web technology, and we just looked at Bootstrap and Materialize and plenty of other frameworks. But they look like mini websites. They don't look like apps. But there are JavaScript frameworks, and here's one I recommend called Ionic, that you write using web technology. You host it on a server, but they look like a mobile app. So all the kind of bits and pieces of the framework, I'm just clicking on the website, and I'm hoping you'll see some example apps. That's actually web code, and it's HTML, CSS that's rendering to make it look like it's got all the buttons and features that you expect on a mobile app. So Ionic is pretty cool, worth thinking about. Oh, sorry, there was a knock at the door. So Ionic, recommend that. But there's more. If you're building for mobiles, I'll come to that one last. There's a product called Xamarin, which is from Microsoft, which is kind of like Visual Studio, but for Android and iOS. So you code in C#, which is, it's still a programming language, but it's not quite as messy as Java, certainly not as messy as Swift and Objective-C. And again, many students are probably quite comfortable coding in the Microsoft environment, and you just pump out stuff both for iOS, Android, and of course Windows and Mac. So it's one code base for many deployment platforms, so that's worth thinking about. You can get that for free, and you can see I'm using my Mac, and there it is saying download it for Mac, and if you do it from a Windows machine, you get a Windows version. But one other thing to think about, and again, there's other environments, this is not the only one. This is one I like, configure.it, and it's you can watch the videos. It's a drop and drag environment for creating mobile apps. So you do tiny bits of code, but some apps you don't need any code. You connect widgets on screen to databases.
App development is one of the most demanding skills today, and you might already have tried many tools out there to get started. You must have realized none of them are easy to use or does the job you want your app to do. That's why we built Configure IT.
Anyway, you get the idea. Their pitch is this is app development, but without programming. Not necessarily to avoid programming, but because this program is really costly and you build up a code base and it's really hard to change. So even technical people like these non-technical drop and drag kind of environments, and minimising the amount of code is a good thing, because you minimise the amount of maintenance you have to do and the amount of change. So you can see you can try it for free. They've got a student offer in, and you really do drop and drag and build it in the browser and pump it out to Android or iOS applications. So hopefully no more interruptions. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how we're going to roll technology-wise. We've got lots of options. I've got licenses to IBM software, a lot of Oracle software we can get for free from what's called the Oracle Technology Network. A lot of the Microsoft stuff we get for free via DreamSpark. The major vendors and many of the minor vendors have free offerings, trial periods, community editions, and of course a lot of good software is open source. So if you've got a need, we can probably meet it. And don't think that because you're IT students that you must code. We just want the thing to work, and we want it to work in a sensible way. We don't want it to be all bells and whistles and underneath the covers for it to be a complete mess. But there's a lot of well-maintainable, solid, well-engineered alternatives to writing a great big code base. So you'll have more questions, but I guess the idea of me walking around to the classes, which I didn't do, why I've done the video, is just to help calm nerves about the technology. We're going to have plenty of technological choices, and they will, even WordPress, will allow you to build complex, useful functionality. Right. Bye.